got CJ playing. This is the Noize Report. You see it there. We have the flashy new dollar store sign now because I'm a cheap bastard and I'm not going to pay a lot of money for one. So I went to Five Below and I paid $250 for it. So you know what we do here? We laugh, we have fun, we interview cool and interesting people. And over here today, to my right, left, above, below, I'm not sure where he's oriented on your screen, but somewhere over there, or here, or there, Mr. Michael Larsen. You saw him on an earlier thing, and as he pointed out, it's been 3 years, and it's really hard to believe it's been 3 years. But yeah. So we're back. We're gonna talk about a bunch of stuff. We're gonna go quick because we have 60 minutes. We're on a strict clock today, but if we don't cover everything, we'll bring them back and we'll cover more. So
Gladly.
first, we're gonna start you off. Tell them who you are for those that didn't hear the first interview. Who you are, the band you represent, and sort of give a rundown of who the other members of the band are as well.
Gladly. Thank you very much. Okay, so my name is Michael Larsen, and I am the lead singer of a little band called Ensign Red out of the San Francisco Bay Area, or Ensign Red, depending upon how you look at it. There's a little story to that. I have a video that I posted about that recently, and if we can go into that if you want to, but Ensign Red, it's basically the same thing. That's the band's name.
Mm-hmm.
We are a five-piece group. We were originally a four-piece up until a few years ago. We had a sea change, if you will, by the departure of one of our guitar players, and then we had another guitar player come in for a while, worked with them. Reality intervened, and so we had another guitar player come in and then a second guitar player coming in. As a matter of fact, the first single that we released for 2023, So I Bleed, the lead guitar player on that song is me, along with our rhythm guitar player, Ed. Excuse me. So let me, ADHD brain, keep focus. So I'm the singer of the group, and our group now consists of myself, Lloyd Ellis on bass, Vic Jones on drum, Ed Scott on guitar, and our newest member that joined us in April, May timeframe. I'm kind of fuzzy on that, but yeah, roughly April, May timeframe. His name is Brian Horban, and he is our new lead guitar player. And on our two most recent singles, From the Shadows and What We Left Behind, that stellar lead work, at least I think it's stellar, is Brian. And so you get a chance to hear him all fresh and coming in hot and heavy. So those are the five of us, and we are playing in and around the San Francisco Bay Area. We are actively recording. We are releasing singles. Currently, we have a few more that we are hoping to get out in the next several months, and we are playing that game right now to where do we keep doing singles or do we regroup for an EP or actually a
Right.
full album? And the neat thing is that because of having the experience of getting a number of singles out over the course of the last 9 months, yeah, about 9 months, it's been a really great experience for us because we've recalibrated that process. We know what it takes. We know how long it takes. We've, I think, developed what is a really solid sound. And I encourage everybody. We are now, whereas when I talked about us before, we were only available on Bandcamp. Now we're available everywhere.
Nice.
Or everywhere that digital music is being done. So you can find us on Spotify. We're on Apple Music. We are on Amazon Music. Basically, all the distribution services that you can think of worldwide. And it's pretty cool because I'll every once in a while I'll see, wait, we got a listing from what? Where is that? Oh, that's the premier streaming service in Australia. Neat.
Nice.
Things I've
Nice.
never even heard of before, but there's a whole bunch of them, and apparently we're there, which is fantastic. So it's a whole different world for us. So now I say, well, where can we hear your music? My answer is you can hear us anywhere.
Everywhere except the bathroom of the local porn club. Porn club.
Uh, And if they want to stream our music there, they want to
Yeah.
pay the royalties for it.
I was gonna say if they want
Who
to
am
pay
I
me,
to
pay
say?
it there too. So,
Who
um,
am I to say?
man, I gotta say, like the drummer's name, you said it was Nick Jones,
Vic,
Vic Jones.
Victor.
That's such a rock and roll name. Like it sounds like something you'd hear in like the Rolling Stones or a band like the Struts or you know this that kind of band that sort of
we,
that
we've got a
kind
fair
of
we've got a fair number of rock names in the group now. Here's
yeah
here's a story. I don't know if I told this the last time, but Vic, our drummer, interestingly enough, remember the first time that I was here, I was talking about my last band that I had a sense of notoriety, and that was Highwire.
right.
Vic was actually my bass player Steve's roadie.
Oh, nice.
So I've known Vic for 30
Minute.
plus years.
A minute.
And at the time, Vic wasn't really performing, or at least at that time wasn't performing. And he was helping us out and doing a lot of the stuff. And every once in a while, Vic will just pop up in practice and says, "Hey, do you remember that gig when X, Y, and Z went down?" I'm like, oh, that's right. You were everywhere with me, weren't you, back then? So anytime he wants to slap me down, or anytime I'm like talking about something that he just wants to, kind of just needle me a little bit, I'll go, "Hey, do you remember that gig at the Stone when we were playing with X band?" I'm like, "Yes, Vic. Okay, right. You were there. I know."
Yeah. I got
And
I got a friend like
part
that, unfortunately. He reminds me times I really wish he would forget, because it's like, you know, it's,
and the other part of that too was that the original guitar player for Highwire, Doug Tracer, was the guitar player that was in the original lineup that became the Mark I version of Ensign Red as well.
nice.
And Doug was the one that, again, because of life circumstances and situations, he decided, you know what, I can't do this right now. So
Yeah.
exit stage left. And again, no disrespect, no nothing. Doug was a
Right.
great guy with our group, and I'm really glad for his participation in the band, because a lot of our core original songs, several of them that we still play, would not exist if it wasn't for him. So, all respect due.
Yeah.
But
Like, life is life, man. Like life will come at you in ways you never expect. Um, truthfully, when we spoke, the last time I was right dead in the middle of a horrific divorce that came out of nowhere. We'd been together for 13 years and two kids, and I just would have never dreamed. But hey, life happens, and it pushed me in a direction of finally, I've been doing this for 30 years in some form or another, whether it was playing in a band or tinkering with production or putting on live shows or just doing whatever I could to kind of just be involved. And um about 6 months ago I sat down and I said, I've never actually formally been trained to do any of the stuff that I do, and it's been a really expensive hobby. And I thought, maybe I should get actual training so I could actually get paid for this shit, or somewhat get paid for it. Like you never truly get paid for it, but like maybe I should get trained to where if I work with friends on a record, I can say more than, hey, just bring me a 12 pack of Bud Light and, we'll call it even. I can say, hey, 20 bucks an hour, 30 bucks an hour, for whatever. So, um, yeah, I'm going to LA Film School for music production.
Cool.
Um, but I would have never done that without the divorce and life sort of stepping in and saying, you got a kid now, you need to quit fucking around. Let's get serious about this because, even at 13, bro, like I knew, like,
Oh,
what are you gonna do? I want to be a rock star. Oh, that's cute. What's your plan B? My plan B was I was gonna be a rock star. Like there was no other plan. Like, and my dad's a truck driver, my grandpa's a farmer, everyone in my family works in a factory, and I know I'm not going to do any of those jobs. I'm just not. And hell or high water, I've stayed away from all of it for the most part, but you know, it was like when I heard Michael Monroe, Dead Jail or Rock and Roll, I knew like that was my song. Like I always do. Those were the three choices, man. So Ensign Red, new song, What We Left Behind. Um talk about it a little bit in the context of how you guys choose to record. You know, is it like individual pieces being put together? Is it everyone goes in the studio and we record together or whatever? And also, is there any special equipment you guys prefer?
Interesting.
Do you prefer Ibanez over Washburn? Do you prefer Audio Technica over Shure? I mean,
Well,
is
well,
there
okay.
something special that maybe somebody in the band just has to have when
So you want some inside baseball on this one? Okay, well, let me see what I can do here. Now, I will tell you one of the things that helped tremendously, and when we first talked about this, I think we had just started talking with having Ed Scott join the band. And I cannot impress how very pivotal having Ed join us was, because Ed has been doing audio recording, arranging, and production for, I think, something in the neighborhood of 30 years, but he's
nice?
done it as a corporate gig. Now, I might be getting this wrong, and I have a feeling if Ed listens to this, he's
It's
going to go, that's not quite right. But like, I hear, oh, yeah, I'm going to be doing sound at a NASCAR event, or, oh,
mhm,
there's this corporate gig, and we had to do a bunch of recording stuff. And yeah, you hear that. Oh, you know, this band that was playing over here? Yeah, I produced that for them. Or, oh yeah, you know this over here? Yeah, that's me and my co-partner in the
right.
business that we were working at the time doing this. So that's how I understand it. I, Ed, if you're listening to this and you get this wrong, if we do this again, you can always say, "Oh, by the way, yeah, this is how that goes." Point
No,
being,
but not
Ed has his home studio is what we call home base.
okay,
So
cool.
when we have our rehearsal room, and our rehearsal room is set up with a fair amount of gear. In fact, we recently reconfigured it. And I laugh about it now because a lot of that gear that was at the studio that we were using has now come home with me, and it's been integrated into my home studio. So my home
Nice.
studio now is it's ridiculous because I have two sets of monitors. I have a Kali Lone Pine 8 set, and I have a JBL 5 Mark II set that I can switch between. So I can do A/B testing right on my desk, which is a little absurd. And I have now a Focusrite Scarlett 18i20, a Scarlett Octopri. Yeah, you got it. And I got a Scarlett 8i6. So it looks like I'm literally an ad for Focusrite, which is
So,
hilarious. But
so
I
go
could
ahead.
bring so many people into my if I want to record a whole choir and give each one of them a separate microphone, I can do that.
Yeah,
Mostly I'm using it just to be able to play around with things like reamping and sending different signals and using stuff. But so point being, Ed is our home base. Ed's studio is where a lot of the work happens. Our band room is where if we want to do live recording or we want to get drums on the floor and just general tracks, we can do it there. Each one of us is set up so that we can record individually. So there
nice.
is no rule that says, hey, we've all got to be in the same room. Oftentimes, what will happen is we'll take a song and we will write it first, or we'll riff it out, or we'll play with some
Mhm.
ideas, get something in play, and then I'll write lyrics or I'll structure a thing for it. And oftentimes it might be, it's half baked. I'm not quite there yet. It might take me a little while. And sometimes something either in life or something happens in my day-to-day reality that gives me the inspiration to go, oh, I know what I can do with this. Some songs I can write all the
Right.
lyrics pretty quickly, and some songs I've struggled with to get the right lyrics for. And What We Left Behind's lyrics changed a few times before we centered in on what the message that we wanted to do was. And but the neat thing was I was able to bring that home. And so what Ed would do is he has his stack. We all use the same tool, by the way. This is something that we standardized on. And I don't know that I don't know that I would say you want to go this route or you don't, but it made sense for us because we have heterogeneous environments. It's not like all five of us have the same Mac setup.
Hmm.
Some of us have PCs, some of us have Macs. And so we weighed it out. Said, which version do we want to do? How do we want to go about it? And Ed said, well, I have been using Studio One Professional for years. Now, mind you, Studio One Professional is like $400 a pop for everybody to buy it. And that's a fairly hefty expense.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why everybody needs every single bell and whistle that's in Professional. Whoever's doing the mix and the mastering, they need it. But if you're just doing the recording and tracking and want to experiment a bit and do some automations and some things with what you're doing, you don't all need to have Professional. So instead, what we said was, how about everybody else get a copy of Artist, which is $99? Like, okay,
Hmm.
$99, perfectly reasonable. And for $99 and the standard toolkit you get with that, that's phenomenal. There's a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, you can do a lot with it. And once you
Yeah.
get used to Studio One's workflow, it's quick. And
Yeah.
then everything's contained in the song. And so you can pass songs on to somebody else. So what Ed will do, for example, is he'll say, I've taken the drums and I've collapsed it down into two channels. And I've taken my rhythm guitar and I've collapsed it down into two channels.
Hmm.
And now, bass, do your thing. Vocals, do your thing. Lead guitar, do your thing.
Right.
And everybody contributes. And the way we look at the way we write our songs is it's not common that one person will come in with a fully finished song.
Right.
That's not the idea. Or even if we do come in with a fully finished song, the logic is we want to go through the 4-stage drip filter that is all the other
Right.
members of the band. Because each one of them is going to have their own ideas, their own thoughts as, hey, this is cool, but what if I did this instead?
Right.
I could give Vic a drum groove that I think would be cool. And he'd be like, yeah, okay, I see your point. I see your point. Let me play that for the all right. Now how about if I do it like this?
What if I
And
speed it up? Just
what
that
if I clean it up? Or what if I invert this? Or I think this might work better or be a little bit more
much. Hmm.
impactful at this stage. And by the time a few passes is done, Vic's totally rewritten my drum line. Or I propose an original bass line for it and that follows along. And Lloyd will go, that's kind of cool. I like that. You know what? I think I might be able to do something a little more interesting with the counterpoint, or maybe, and so Lloyd will write another line and he's done something that's different. And Ed will go, yeah, I kind of like what you're doing with that. Let me play it my style. Let me put my punch. Let me put my tone in it. And it morphs through him.
Yeah.
And Brian, one of the cool things about Brian is that, again, I play guitar as well. And
Mm.
for So I Bleed, the first single we released back in May, that lead guitar is me because Brian wasn't even part of the band yet. We were committed to recording the solo and getting it. And I went over and we were talking to Brian, and Brian was not 100% sure if he was going to be able to make this work, or there were situations that he was having to work through. But he said, but you know what? I would love to see this song get out for you guys. So if you want me to be a guest and I'll record a solo for you, sure, no problem. I thought, okay, that's great. So I went over to Ed's place. I said, I got to give him something to think. So here's some of the ideas that I had. And I was playing them for him. And I was saying, I think this would be kind of cool to do this and this and this and this. And Ed just looked at me and he nodded. I thought, okay. And then he said, hold that thought. And he went to the wall and he grabbed his Les Paul Standard, like his baby. He's
Nice.
got Ed's got the guitar collection to beat all
Yeah.
guitar collections. It's like, dude, how many of these do you have? And he's a fan of Gibson, ESP, a
Nice.
bunch of other,
I love
a
the
bunch
tone
of
of a
other
Gibson.
bands,
I can't play, but I
but
love the tone of a Gibson.
yeah,
Like,
but he says the main guitar that's in the middle of his rack, he just reached on the wall, grabbed it, put it in my lap, and took the cord, plugged it in. He said, just play it. You know what you want to do. Just play it. I'm like, uh, you know, red light fever hits me. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. You know what you're doing. Just play it. We've got all day. Work through it. Get the jitters out. You'll be fine. Look at it this way. It's a reference track for whoever we bring in so that they got an idea as to what to play. And if it's terrible, we can always delete it and start fresh. Okay, sure.
Right.
And so I played the little bit that I knew that I thought would be cool. And between Ed and I, we kind of traded it off a little bit so that each of us put our own spin on a couple of things. So the first part's me, second part's Ed, uh, third part's both of us, and then the outro is me. And it was an interesting solo. And I thought, okay, cool. It's a placeholder. That's fine. So Brian comes in and Brian hears the solo that we recorded. And again, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if this is
Right.
close to what he said, but from what I understand, it is like, dudes, what do you want me to do with this? This is fine. You don't need, if you got this, you don't need me. This
Right.
is going to work out just fine. Just stick with it. I have nothing to add to this.
Oh,
And so, yeah. And so it's kind of neat to realize that the So I Bleed solo is not just me singing, but it's me playing lead guitar as well. And that's the first time ever that I've recorded a lead guitar track. But
Right.
because of that experience, Brian is very willing to say, hey, Michael, do you have any ideas for what we might want to do for the solo? I'm like, dude, you're the lead guitar player. What am I going to offer? Is I heard what you can play. You know how to structure things. You know some
Yeah.
ideas and stuff. So I'd love to hear your ideas or your thoughts as to what you think might work for this. That's a neat experience. Most vocalists never get the opportunity to say, yeah, I helped my lead guitar player come up with the solo for this. That's
Right.
not a conversation that happens very often, but in our case, it does. And it was
Unless you're like
very
Richie
cool.
Kotzen or somebody,
Oh yeah. And it was just really neat to be able to say, because we were talking about this over the course of a couple of months, because I had some ideas that I thought would work. And my original idea was something that was a lot like a hornpipe or a jig that would have
Right.
this kind of bouncy playing part, and then it would go into this longer legato feel. And he liked the ideas of that. And he said, okay, cool. I get what you're after. I don't really play that way, but let me see if I can work something out. And he came up with this trill pick, this tremolo picking, and kind of a bounce off of the open string that jumps back and forth that kind of simulates what a fiddler would do with double stops and such, which sounds really cool. And then he came up with this really dissonant section in the middle and this long legato play out that worked really well. So he took my ideas, but he took them in a place that was totally different than what I had originally suggested. And so that's one of the big things that I think makes this song really cool is this one was definitely the full filter system working through. Everybody got a chance to work on their part, gel with it, make it fit, and put it together. And I finally got the words out that I really wanted to sing. A friend of mine who had a chance to do a beta listen to it said, so is this like War Pigs 2.0 or War Pigs for 2023? I said, that was not quite where I was going with it, but I will gladly accept that.
Right.
Because I think that's a pretty good representation of what the song is meant to be about. Now, I have a cardinal rule. I don't explain my lyrics. I mean, I'll give you some, there's certainly,
Right.
I'll give you a basic synopsis, but I will not explain my lyrics because I want the listener to make up their own mind. I will not, it's part of the reason why I do my best I will discuss ideas, but I don't get political with them because my logic is I want people to figure out what I'm about just straight from hearing it. And if they think that I'm A, then cool, I'm A. If they think I'm B, cool, I'm B. Or if they think I'm talking about something totally different, that's great. I want them to make the song personal and interpret it the way that works for them.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm not so interested in this is my message and you must receive it exactly as I say it. No, if you get something out of the song that I didn't even necessarily intend, That's great.
Right.
That means I'm actually writing something that transcends my own thoughts and it's letting people put themselves into it. And seriously, as a lyric writer, you can't ask for anything more.
Right. I mean, Hotel California, I think is a classic example of a song that, you know, Don has been pretty consistent in sort of the same train of thought of I'm not going to explain what this is. It's basically what you take from it. So you can really listen to Hotel California and you can say, okay, it's about drugs or it's about mental illness or it's about, there's so many different ways that you can interpret, you know, what he's saying in that song, you know, from the aspect of you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. You know, it can be drug addiction, it could be mental, you know, disease of schizophrenia or bipolar, it can be just paranoia. I mean, there's so many different ways to take it. So I kind of totally understand that. And you know, the studio thing is interesting to me because 3 years ago, I listened to music from the aspect of a music fan.
Mhm.
You know, like I was the guy who I listen to everything, as you can see behind me, whether it's Prince or Iron Maiden or Bob Marley or AC/DC or Pink Floyd or, you know, whatever. Um, I have all these musical tastes. So I was always like, okay, I listen to, and this is what I take from it. But now that I'm going through these courses and classes, I find myself hearing music in a different way because now I'm hearing it from the production side of it and I understand the production side of it. Okay, this is how they achieved this drum sound. This is how they achieved this mic sound. This is how they achieved this guitar tone. And shit that I never knew before, you know, because I all the production I've done on a PC with Reaper. And Reaper is, you know, it's a pretty low key program. It's not super powerful, but it gets the job done and it's cheap. Um, I started these classes. They forgot to inform me, hey, there's this awesome tech kit that we send you as part of the course. I was unaware of this. So I got 3 boxes yesterday and I'm like, cool, what is this? Oh, well, this is all the stuff you need to set up a home studio. So I got this really awesome, cool MacBook Pro
Oh,
and
nice.
this iPad, and they sent me a set of these. I have
I have
no
that I have that exact set.
I have no fucking idea how to even set up a studio monitor because I've been doing everything on my surround sound system for I have a JBL surround sound
Right, right.
system, and it's a really good one. It's a 250-watt surround sound system for computer, so it's more than capable of handling. And you know, I have the Beats by Dre Studio headphones, and so I have different avenues. But you know, they sent me all this stuff, the Audio Technica and the Scarlett, and I'm like, I don't even know how to use this shit. Like I've never used any of it.
Well,
So now I'm kind of like,
the good news is that a lot of the stuff, especially the Scarlett, is if you're using a 2i2, for example, it's two in, it's
yeah,
two out. It's fairly straightforward. You got
that's
a
what it is.
USB input that plugs into your computer, and you set up the basics. You set up the Red toolkit, if you will, so you can
Yeah.
get a couple of plugins automatically that you can just use out of the box, and they work really nicely. And they also have the remote control software. Takes a little bit to play around with, but it's not too hard, especially if you're just using the airlift, which is kind of a cloud lifter built into it. If you have the version 4, I think there's a couple of extra little examples that are in it. Mine is a version 3, so
Yeah, this is third generation 2i2.
okay, yeah. So
So
you probably have something fairly similar with a phantom power boost, and you probably have the air option, which will it just gives you a little bit of a clearer lift on your
I mean,
microphone.
the
It's
biggest
which is
change
neat.
for me is I'm attending LA Film School. That's who my course is through. So, well, industry standard is MacBook Pro and Pro Tools. And I'm like,
Okay.
oh, y'all are paying for that, right? Because Pro Tools is fucking expensive. Like, I'm broke. I can't afford Pro Tools. So they give you Pro Tools, they give you Logic, they give you um Auto Tune, they give you all the VSTs, plugins. I mean, this is a whole. It's like a $9,000 tech kit. So I was like, okay, this is kind of a
Wow.
cool bonus. You know, like I had no idea they provided all of this. I thought I was just going to be working with what I had sort of hobbled together. And again, you know, now I'm listening to this from a different aspect of hearing things that I would have never heard before because, you know, and it's cool. Like I kind of, it's different now because it's like, you know, before where I was listening to, you know, stuff and it was just like, oh yeah, that's a cool sounding guitar. Now I actually have a little bit of knowledge of how they got to that part. Um, so it's like way more interesting to me, and I guess I can talk about it a little more now than I could before because you know before talking to a producer or somebody who was in the studio, okay, you did what? Oh, cool, awesome, and that was the extent of my knowledge. Like I'd been in the studio one time in my life back in 1991. So it was long before the whole computerized shit, you know. And you know, it was just one of them things where I want to go back in and record my own music now because I have probably 40 songs that have been with me for 30 years since the last record I recorded. And they've been through 100 different versions over the years of rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. So, um, yeah. Anywho, From the Shadows, you mentioned that. That's one of the other songs you recorded, right?
Yes. So we released that one in August. Yes.
So, Behind the Ramparts, is that an EP? Is it just a collection of
Yes.
songs?
So
I
behind the so okay, so to clarify
know I kind of
for
jumped.
no, which is fine, which is fine. So to give you a floor, if you will, so you understand how this all works. When we decided to push everything out to the world, we decided to take all of our Mark One material, in other words, all the stuff that we recorded with our original guitar player, and we took the four best songs that we recorded. We do have a fifth song that I just felt was a little bit overly derivative of
Mhm.
Alice in Chains at the time. And it was one of the earlier songs
It
that we
happens.
recorded. But it was just a little too on the nose. I thought, I'd rather not have that on the EP. And everybody said, yeah, that's fine. We don't need to have that. But the other four songs I was happy to have there: Breakdown, Love and Hate, Monochrome, and Turnaround. Those are all songs that were original from the original incarnation of the band and what we had at the time and how we recorded. And we decided, let's put this out. We did a soft launch when we decided to set everything up, and we used that as our test platform just to push everything out and say, here's this material from the olden days. It's now available. And we would use it to track, are we getting out to every place? And
Okay.
so we used it, I don't want to say as a Trojan horse, that sounds weird,
Right.
but the idea is we used it as a seeding point to say that, hey, we have material everywhere, because we didn't want to release So I Bleed
Right.
on May
Didn't want
8th,
to do the new
May
stuff
9th, whatever.
quite yet.
We
So,
we wanted it, well, we wanted to have it, but we also didn't want to have you just show up and like there's only one song.
mhm.
So having an EP that was already there said, oh, okay, there's some substance. I can go back and I can listen to more songs. And that helped actually quite well, in the sense that when So I Bleeds dropped, then people started to listen. And again, the bigger challenge is, where are they listening? And so we try to keep track and see.
Right.
And right now, a lot of people, from my perspective, I would say I want to focus on Spotify because that's where a lot of people are listening. But I talk to many of my bandmates and they go, oh, I don't really use Spotify. You don't? No, I use iTunes, or I use
Yeah.
Apple Music, or I use some other thing, or um,
I don't use Spotify. I use
yeah, yeah, and that was a new revelation to me. I thought, wait, I thought everybody was on Spotify.
I mean,
And
they're
it
on
turns
there,
out,
but some people, I
yeah,
just
they just don't
Spotify
use
doesn't
it
run
on the
well to me.
regular.
Like it just
Yeah.
it's really clunky to me to find shit to where YouTube Music and Apple Music are so much cleaner.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and I
so
use
with
YouTube Music because it's connected to my YouTube channel. So
and we are on YouTube Music too, I should add. So
yeah,
you can find us there as well, which is cool. And again, it comes down to there's a cumulative mix. So if you pay attention to just one platform and you go, oh man, it's, or hey, we're doing really good here, but we're not doing so good here. What's the story? Well, you can sit down and start to tweak and say, how
right.
much emphasis do we want to put in this? How much do we want to play with it? And I'm realizing and talking to a number of my friends who are on Spotify, they said, you just got on Spotify, what, a few months ago? Yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah,
You're not, unless you are somebody very young or you have already built a buzz over a period of many years. And let's face it, we're an older band,
yeah,
and we just are. That's
yeah.
and we're an older band made up of a bunch
Unless you
of
have some
middle-aged
stupid gimmick.
guys, and we don't really, and that's
Right.
the whole
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
I, I like what Timothy J is a DJ for digital rock radio, and he has a show called the Creative Original Artists of Rock, and we've been on that show and a few others. And what was neat was I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, would you be willing to kind of write up a little bio thing that we can use for our press kit?" So, because we're terrible at describing ourselves, you know. I
I love Tim. Tim's a good friend. So
Oh, cool, yeah. So it's funny
the
because it's like,
core radio
Tim. All
show.
right. Yeah. No, I Tim and I go way back.
That's
In
awesome.
fact, the
He's
very
such a cool
first
guy.
gig, the very first gig that I ever played, that was a professional gig, not a party gig or a kegger in somebody's backyard, but an actual club gig where tickets were sold and we had an audience there to see us on a professional stage with PA, etc. That very first show, the middle band was a band called Chandelier, and Chandelier's vocalist was Timothy.
Yeah.
And that's where I met him. 30, oh, I don't want to say how long ago that
Yeah.
was, but let's
It's
just over 30 years ago. Let's
it sneaks
just
up
leave
on
it
you,
at
bro. Like
yeah, yeah.
it sneaks up on you. Like you know.
Getting scary close to another number, but we're not going to talk about that. But so I've known Timothy for a long time, and it's been great because he knows me. He knows what I've
Mhm.
been through, what bands I've been through, and the various things. He still loves to just anytime he talks to me, he always says, "Hey Kelly, what's up?" Because he always refers to me as Kelly because that was my stage name back
Nice.
then. And a few people still will only call me Kelly. But it was fun to say, okay, Timothy, I know that have an objective ear.
Hmm.
I'm not going to be able to objectively say, I know what I want to say that we sound like,
Right.
but that's me inserting my own bias.
Right.
You don't have that. You don't have, I mean, you have the history of me, but you don't have the history of the band and everything else. What do you think we sound like? And I would love it if you could tell us. And he gave a write up for us. And I love the way that he said it. He says, Ensign Red they're bold, they're brash, and they're a little bit rebellious because they're not trying to sound like a particular genre.
Right.
They're willing to go toe to toe with anything. I mean, I'm not going to say that we're not Sleep Token level of go toe to toe with anything. What genre are they? Yes.
Sleep Token is boring as shit to me, dude. Like I just
Well, and that's okay. I
just
understand that.
not a band I could get into. Ghost is the same way.
I'm a total. I may be the weird one. I love Sleep Token, but I love Sleep Token because of the various weird things they do. But then again, from the perspective, I like that gothic ethereal stuff. Like Oceans of Slumber is a band that I adore. I
Love
think they're
them.
amazing. For a similar vibe because they mix up things. They're not trying to be one thing, and that's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Sleep Token maybe for some goes way overboard because they pull in everything under the sun, which I think is fun, but some other people find it a little, I don't know. I can't get my head around it.
But
And
see,
that's okay.
here's the funny thing. I don't the Sleep Token kind of is to me, but a band that I absolutely love that you'll laugh at because you'll know this reference being an anime fan. I'm a massive, massive fan of Maximum the Hormone.
Oh yeah.
And Maximum the Hormone is like a fucking musical train wreck. Like you
Yes.
hear their song and you're just like, fuck did I just listen
What?
to? Yeah, like that. uh, what? Because it's like hardcore and reggae and thrash and
Yeah.
J-pop, and it's just. But I love them for the same reasons I love Mike Patton and Mr. Bungle.
Oh yeah.
You just never
Exactly.
know what the hell you're gonna get in one of their songs, and it's always just so over the top, and it's like I definitely respect the genre bending type of thing, but Sleep Token is kind of one of them bands that I just maybe I haven't listened to them enough, or maybe I haven't really been in the mindset of it. Um, because this is my favorite band, and it took me a couple years when I first
Yeah.
heard Blue October. I was like, oh, that's fucking horrible, and I wasn't in that place. And then I was really depressed, and I heard 13th floor elevator, and I was like, whoa, it was fucking revelation. And then immediately I got it, like, okay, wait, dude is a fucking genius, and now I will fight you over Justin, bro. Like, like um so what I want to do, because we're kind of running towards the end, you mentioned it a little bit before we started. You have a list of 5 songs or 5 records that you kind of consider essential, maybe lesser known, maybe people missed them, maybe people overlooked them. But kind of give your list real quick, because I sort of
Okay.
have a list
So
of my own.
all right. So for now to be fair, again, one of the things that we talk about with Ensign Red is that we are a band that prides itself on the fact that none of us are cookie cutters of each other.
Right.
None of us listens to exactly the same music. My bass player is absolutely a fan of old school Bay Area thrash and other bands, and that is his absolute love and joy. And that's always been, and that's great. And Ed's got his own stuff that he digs. He's kind of into the boogie style of rock. He gets into a fair amount of blues. Brian has also similar stuff. Like thrash is something I think that's kind of a common theme, because we're a heavy group, and there's a lot of thrash I like too, but I tend to go more into the alternative side. Brian's a little bit more of especially from being a lead player. He said that there's certain guitar players that he really loves. He loves George Lynch and Dokken. He loves Randy Rhoads, of course, Eddie Van Halen, Dimebag Darrell. Those are the people that really excite him. And so it's interesting to see what bands he'll turn up. Vic also same deal. He's got a lot of groups that he's really into, and we'll play this game in the studio where we'll just say, "Hey, have you heard this? Hey, have you heard this? Hey, have you heard this?" And I'm the one that's expected to come in with "All right, what weird crap is Michael listening to this week?" Right? And it's always fun to see their reactions. Like I'll throw Oceans of Slumber at them, and they'll go, wow, that's a trip. Or I throw Relica from Australia at them,
Yeah.
who is a band, by the way, that I love. And if you're not familiar with Relica, check out the song Bearer of Bad News. That alone will get you going, ooh, that's interesting.
I'm
Show
a
me
massive
more.
fan of Australian music,
Yeah.
dude.
Well,
Like Jimmy
Relica is.
Jimmy Burns to me is a fucking godfather, bro. Like, you know,
So again, but back to this again. I am the only one of the group, at least to my knowledge, or at least that has actually owned up to it, that performed in the glam scene. And I admit that freely. I was a frontman in it. I loved that. I loved all of that kind of over the top, just the drama, the whole theatrical element of it. It was fun, and it's something that I love doing. And so, of course, I have an affinity for a lot of that stuff. Some people will try to distance themselves from the hair band scene. And I always look at them and I say, hair band was not a term we used until about the mid 90s. And then it was used disparagingly to
yeah,
distance ourselves
it
from
was
it,
not
right?
supposed to be. It was not
It was
supposed
not,
to be
no, that was
a
not the name of
scary
it.
term.
We called it either glam metal or, the next generation of glam rock, or, pop metal or whatever, which was fun. Or we just called it metal. We
Yeah.
didn't really necessarily, there wasn't anything heavy about it, but there was a certain vibe to it and we loved it. And a lot of bands just got lumped in with that. And a lot of music from bands that were very popular and that had a certain vibe. And I would maybe say a little bit of overt record company influence deciding what they were doing. That's a whole story that could take up its own
Industry
podcast.
plants.
I don't know if I could go that far, but industry hand, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, hey, guess what? You're gonna put this out. I love that. I love where you're going with this album. But yeah, Warrant, yeah, that song Cherry Pie, yeah, that's gonna be your single.
Yeah.
Trust us. It's gonna go. It's gonna be great.
The
You know,
song.
which on what's the song? Yes, yeah, and
I would say the song
no
that
question.
Chingy absolutely hated.
No question. Well, you think about the fact that he wanted to lead with Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Yeah.
What could have been had that have been
Yeah.
the leadoff single, right?
Yeah.
Instead, they put this song out because, again, the record label said, hey, if you want to be able to have our funds and do our things, you do what we
Yep.
tell you. And so they did. And the
Dance
point is,
puppet.
and a lot of that happened, you know. So a lot of bands, you'll see a lot of interviews. Well, we decided we wanted to have some fun and we wanted to make this kind of a party record and get the good time vibe. Translation: the record company said you're going to put something on there that's commercial and sellable, and you're gonna like it. So by the time you get into the early to mid 90s, 93, 94 timeframe, when most of the glam metal had fallen out of favor for grunge and for alternative and industrial metal and all that type of stuff, you had bands that were saying, well, we've got nothing to lose here, or we're not the popular brand anymore, so they're not going to really care what we do, or we better change with the times or we're doomed, or we better figure something out. And in that process, there were a bunch of albums that came out that were really good, really solid albums that unfortunately were either ignored or were just looked at as afterthoughts.
Mhm.
And then years later, people have come back and said, you know what? Those were amazing records.
Mhm.
What if those albums were these bands' first forays into the scene? And so I have a list of 4 that I usually point to, and I have a 5th that I give an honorable mention to because I've come to it a little bit later, just because I felt it was the most, we're going to try to see if we can make this work.
Mhm.
But over the years, I've come to really appreciate it a lot more. So let's start with number 1. The number 1 first album I put in this holy list of doomed albums that should have had better take is Motley Crue's 1994 album with John Corabi as their lead
Yeah.
singer. I love that album passionately. It is my second favorite, or depending on when you catch me, my tied for first place Motley Crue album, tied with Too Fast for Love. Too Fast for Love is an essential album for the Sunset Strip and hair metal and glam scene. Without it, who knows what would have happened. So it deserves its place as that punky, heavy metal, hard rocky, bluesy blending of sounds that made a scene without question. But Motley Crue's 94
Yeah.
was
Smoke
just
the
something.
Sky is still my favorite.
Absolutely.
That guitar riff is just so tough, dude.
Hooligans Holiday, Poison Apple, Power to the Music, all those songs are fantastic. That if you haven't heard it, or if you're like, I'm not sure, it wasn't really that great, go back and give it a listen. You might be surprised.
Yeah.
Number 2 would be Warrant's Dog Eat Dog. That is an album that was revelatory. They realize we have nothing to lose here.
Right.
Let's throw it all down and let's show what we've got. And Janie was like, I'm going to show you that I have some variance to my songwriting and that I am not just the cherry pie guy. Poor dude never escaped it. And he was the cherry pie guy henceforth and evermore. But I would say, if you listen to Dog Eat Dog and gave it a really good listen, you would say, you know what? That's a pretty solid album.
It's solid as shit, dude. April 2031, Inside Out.
Number 3.
Teresa.
Yeah. Number 3 is the album that honestly, this poor band, they just got the raw end of the deal for varying reasons, you know, but but it's Winger's Pull. It's their third album. And it's one that not a lot of people have heard, but those who have heard it have said, whoa, who
Yeah.
is this? This is not the band that put out that self-titled and In the Heart of the Young. This is not the same
Yeah.
group. Well, it is the
It
same
is.
group, but it's the same group with the training wheels taken off and the governor taken off of the motor and said, all right, go for it. Because we don't know, this might be your last chance, and we're probably gonna say bye-bye after this anyway. So it's probably not going to get any radio play anyway. So go nuts. And they did. And it's one of those albums you just say, oh, there is so much good stuff here. Number 4 is, and again, these last two I kind of vacillate on, and I can
Right.
change places with them depending upon when you want to hit me with it. Nothing is going to top their second album. Their second album was an absolute masterpiece, but Subhuman Race by Skid Row is a really deserving album that did not get the due that it should
Yeah.
have had. They had innovation in around 1993, 1994 that was really cool, but let's just face it, Pantera was soaking up all the oxygen.
Yeah. And
And
Sebastian was kind of on his way out the door.
Sebastian was kind of on the way out the door anyway, but that was a really solid album. And looking back, you go, oh man, there's some good stuff here. There are some good songs on
Have you
this.
heard his new song?
I have, and
It
it's
really reminds me of Subhuman Race. It really
yeah,
has that tone. Like
and it
my
reminds
first
us
thought.
that hey, for all of his boisterousness and all of his maybe egoisms and all this with it, the man can walk the talk. So, when it comes right down to it, the boy's got some pipes when he puts his mind to it.
Yeah.
No question. And so that's an album I put there. And number 5, again, I kind of put in as an honorable mention because at the time when I heard it, I was like, these guys are trying way too hard. But actually coming back later on and listening to it, no, there's some really good songs here. And had this album come out a couple of cycles earlier, could have been a real interesting change. And that band itself and the way that they are looked at might have changed. And that's Poison's Native Tongue, not human tongue, Native Tongue. And that's actually a really good album. The songs on that are solid. Granted, Brett still has a little bit of a monotone, reedy voice that, give or take, don't quite, it's him. But Richie brought such a vibe to that album.
Yeah.
He made that album stand out in a way that was amazing. So those are 5 albums that I would say, if you never gave them their due back in the early 90s, go back and listen to those 5 albums, and you might be really surprised at how much you enjoy them today.
Yeah.
Listen to them with fresh ears. Don't listen to them with your preconceived notions or, oh yeah, this was a band that I listened to when I was a teenager and I grew out of them. Fair, but go back and listen to them with fresh ears. And I'm willing to bet that you're going to listen to that and go, there is some really good stuff on these albums. And it's a shame that nobody paid attention to it.
Yeah. So
there you go. There's
I have my own list that it changes a lot, and I actually have about 10 on my list, but we're just going to do the top 5 really quick. So very quickly, just off the top, Crew and Dog are
so we're on the
2
same
of my
page
favorites.
here.
Yeah. Number 3 for me is a band that they were never really famous for multiple reasons. Mainly because the lead singer is a complete fucking psychopath, not in a bad way, but he is rock and roll to his bone. Salutations from the Ghetto Nation by Warrior Soul.
Oh yes, Warrior Soul is fantastic.
Yeah, Corey is. I've known Corey even before he had Warrior Soul, and Corey is a madman. Like, he's a psychopath, but in the rock and roll way. Like, he is just so far out towards the edge, man, that the fact that Corey has never fallen over the edge is astounding to me. And Corey, just his ability to mix that sort of punk style with the hard rock style, and I mean, it's just so many of my early bands were that sound of that punk and hard rock sound, and I wanted to be Corey like so badly when Corey. I was kind of doing it before Corey even, but when I saw Corey and I heard Corey, I just thought that's what when anyone asked me, what are you trying to do? That's what I'm trying to do. Like, that was
You
when
know,
I heard even the first couple records, I was like, that's what I want. That's the sound
yeah,
I want. Like that like remember I told you about that song that's what I was trying to do.
yeah.
And then all my friends were like, oh yeah, I get it now. I get it now. Um so number 4 on my list is a guy who I absolutely idolize. It's the debut album from Cell Dweller. I love Clayton. I think Clayton, whether it's Cell Dweller, whether it's Circle of Dust, whether it's Scandroid, I love the fact that Clayton can literally do the heaviest shit to the most electronic shit to the most Pink Floyd sounding shit, and he does it in a way that's just so outstanding. Um, and then my last one, LA Band. The fact that fucking Axl Rose got famous by stealing his moves and his style and everything. It's the band Shark Island.
Oh,
The Law, the
yes.
Order. Um, you know, this band, they should have been huge. I mean, they were on the Bill and Ted soundtrack. They were on
Hmm.
so
Father
many
Time. Yep.
soundtracks. They sold out every show in LA. Like, they were Sunset Strip kings. And the fact that people just, for whatever reason, looked past Richard and Spencer and those guys, and then Axel come along and just completely stole Richard's stage thing, with the shimmy and the microphone, and it was like,
Right, right.
fuck it, are you serious? Like Axel, for all his stuff, great singer, but he's really not the singer that Richard was. Like Richard was such a phenomenal singer and
Oh,
a
he was, I agree,
wonderful human
absolutely.
being. Like I'm
My
I'm still friends with Richard, so
my drummer Taz from Highwire was a big fan of Shark Island. Anytime they came to the Bay Area, it's like,
yeah,
hey, we're going. Like,
yeah.
okay, I'm with you. Let's do
And
it.
they put on such a fucking great show. I mean, they were so disgustingly catchy. Like, and it was hard to understand because the songs would start out to where, um, how do I believe, and it started out like, okay, and then the chorus would kick in, and you'd be like, fuck, that's catchy. Like, you know, in Father Time, and just so many songs that they had that they were really good songs and solid. And I don't know how people missed, but I still love them. So that's sort of the 5 records that I continually go back to all of the time. Um, Also the first Spread Eagle record,
It's cool. Yeah.
Through These
Going back,
Eyes and Switchblade Serenade. Switchblade Serenade is another song that dan, 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 the way it almost has that same vibe like Smoke the Sky, the guitar that Paul played in it. It's such a cool guitar riff, So, and Ray's voice. I mean, if you've never heard the band Spread Eagle, Ray West's voice, man, it's like a fucking siren. Like it just cuts through everything. Like I don't know how he sings like that and doesn't blow his voice to hell. Same with Jimmy Barnes. Like I don't know how Jimmy has done it for 50 years and not blown his voice to hell. But anywho, wrap it up real quick because I know you have a place to be very shortly. Where do people
well, thank
find
you.
you other than everywhere? Where do they find the Ensign?
Well, if you want,
So,
again, I would suggest start with Spotify or YouTube Music. Just do a search for Ensign Red. That's spelled Ensign space red, 2 words. And for if you're curious, Ensign or Ensign Red. Ensign Red is easier to pronounce, so that's what I usually go with. But if you want to be, thematically correct, it should be Ensign Red because it
right,
is referencing the red flag of the golden age of piracy, and a flag is an ensign. So
right.
that's, but it's not the point is, if you know how to spell it and you put Ensign Red or Ensign Red in, you'll find us. if you see that flag or you see the skull that's saying shh, that's us. And we have an EP out. We have 3 singles out. Our most recent single is called What We Left Behind. That was released on December 7th.
Mhm.
And we would love for you to listen to it. We would love for you to share it. We would love for you to buy it. Plain and simple. And the more people that know about it and the more people that give us feedback, and if they like what they hear, crunch all you like, we'll make more.
Yeah. And oddly enough, when you look up them, you may come across, I didn't know this until about 5 minutes before we got on here. There is now a cinnamon roll whiskey called
Yes.
Ensign Red.
And we had an interesting conversation about that early on. I said, is this going to be a problem? Is this going to be an issue?
Yeah,
And basically the answer is nope, as long as that cinnamon roll whiskey company doesn't start making rock and roll, and as long as we don't become distillers, we can
right.
coexist.
Yeah,
It's fine.
it was kind of cool because
It was
I didn't know
funny, yeah,
about
but it is
and
something that does come up every once in a while. And again, Ensign Red was the original name of the old flag of Canada before
right.
they adopted the maple leaf. So when
Yeah.
you look at the old flag of Canada, the red field with the British flag that used to be the national flag of Canada, that's called the Red Ensign, or flip it around, Ensign Red.
Nice.
And but again, but that's not the version that we take it from. We take it from the red flag that pirate ships would fly when they were in the mood to take no prisoners.
Cool. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna wrap it up now because Michael has something coming up here very shortly. But we're gonna bring him back very soon. We got the new show that we're gonna kick off soon called the Loud List, and there it's a show with top 10 lists of stuff like we did. They're theme topics, like the greatest guitar players not named Eddie Van Halen, or the greatest drummers not named Neil Peart, and we make top 10 lists and then we sort of trade the list. But we'll do that on the next round. In the meantime, check out these guys, check out the band, buy the music. I'll let them know you heard them on the Noize Report. And as always, you know how we wrap this up. Be well, treat each other with kindness. And remember, no matter what you're going through, music heals.
Excellent.